I'm getting the audio going. Okay, so the podcast class. So the purpose is video and audio. Talk about kind of how this fits in with the cinema school curriculum.
So that's ongoing, I think.
Okay.
This started over a year ago because I guess there was a donation given to the dean's office. And my understanding is one of the requirements for that donation was that they set up a podcast class.
Okay.
So there was money now to suddenly create something real. I had already been working in that space a little bit, so when it came up, I just started interjecting my opinion about how it should be. And so the first podcast class that happened was also audio and video, but it was a little clunky because we were using some of the broadcast cameras on the stage, and I had a small recorder.
Okay.
You know,
When did
like
that class happen?
So that was, let me think. Last semester was the second.
So spring
semester.
21?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was it went well, but after it was established, I saw a bunch of ways to improve it. I basically came back to the team and gave them a wish list.
Okay.
Fortunately, they had a budget, and we built this room
Okay.
with this gear.
Back up a little bit. How did you become interested in podcasting?
COVID.
Oh.
So I'm a still photographer outside of here as well. And one of the things that insulted me about Zoom was how bad everybody looked, including network television personalities that were recruiting from home. So I had taken my Nikon and I set it up and I hacked it as a Zoom camera. And after I did that, I hacked the room and I actually lit it.
Ah.
So
So you were the only person who looked good on your Zoom call.
I was the only person that looked good in Zoom. And so that turned into, I would finish my Zoom call and I would get 2 or 3 calls from cinematography faculty asking me, so how did you do that? And so I was kind of sharing it. So I figured once I had that set up, it only made sense to utilize it. I might as well use it in some way. So I started thinking about also podcasting with it. So I just started playing more as a proof of concept to see if I could actually do it. So I started doing remote interviews with people with my setup, and am still developing that. And now I'm in pre-production with my wife's podcast and another friend of mine who I'm also in
Can you
pre-production.
be in pre-production on my podcast?
Yes, absolutely. You want to do one?
I do, and I've been talking. I actually have been talking to this alum Tracy Egbes, who works for Wandery, about. But the problem is that she's got to produce podcasts with real budgets on time signs and all of that. Like, she wants to help, but she just doesn't have the bandwidth right now to help me with. But you and I could do it on work time here.
Certainly, like I'll show you anything I know and help you get along. The beauty of this space is that it's very popular right now. It hasn't even scratched the surface in terms of its reach.
Oh, wow.
So it's not even there yet. It's not even at saturation.
You're talking about podcasting in
Yes,
general. Yes.
podcasting in general.
Yeah.
You can go to $20,000 budget to just running it off your phone.
Right.
So there's the ability to do it at whatever level you are, and we talk about not waiting or stopping. Or if you wanted to do it, you could start tomorrow with whatever's within arm's reach, and then kind of grow into it.
Talk a little bit about before we get back to like how this fits into the curriculum. Talk about like why you would want to have the camera setup and all that, because a lot of people think of podcasting as you just like you soundproof your closet and you go in there and do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
You could absolutely do that. I think I'll give my personal opinion. In my opinion, the market of podcasting and all of this is not just sort of a side cool thing that people are doing now. I think we're getting to the point where if you have any kind of brand or name that you put out there, it's going to be a requirement, just like Instagram or Facebook. I think we're getting close to the point where it's not going to be different.
Okay.
So I think that this, if you were an educator. I mean, when you look at who is out there, all the top brands, all the top personalities, they have their own because they recognize that it adds to their reach. So I think it's one of those things where it's going to be something that people have to do if they want to get whatever they're doing seen or heard.
And so, what makes this endeavor? Tell me about what makes this endeavor then quintessentially like School of Cinematic Arts related, whether it's storytelling or some collaborative approach, or what's the SCA angle on it then?
I don't know if I can give the official answer to that. From where I stand and what I see it as a value support to all of it.
Okay.
In other words, we are in the business of storytelling. Forget about whether it's sound or camera or video games. It's all storytelling. So the process of podcasting supports that. So the aspect of creating a narrative about what the university is doing, what the students are doing, what our partners are doing, and having a conversation like that, and also educating students about getting excited about that concept and making them feel like champions that they can go out on their own and do it, at any level.
So it sounds then that you're approaching this as it can be valuable to all the divisions, because as you know,
Absolutely.
a lot of our curriculum is very siloed by divisions. There are, of
Unfortunately,
course,
yes.
efforts to there's some projects where things come together, but still not as fluidly as you'd hope. There's still work to be done there.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
what division is this class even in, and how are you?
Well, it's part of the Zemeckis.
Okay, so
roof.
just like a part of the facilities here.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have their television courses and
Right.
The comedy
Trojan
classes
Vision.
and the reality TV show, and so this class falls under supervision of Kathleen and all of that.
Oh, okay.
When I was talking about the idea of having an official SCA podcast, it addresses that very thing that you talked about, is
Okay.
blurring the lines between those silos.
Right.
Because we have really amazing things happening here from really different departments and different personalities. So all of that should be talked about, so that she has a better understanding of it the first couple of glances on the website, or is attracted to, who we're talking to and what we're talking about.
Right.
So that's how I see it.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if the dean's office, if they would have a different take on it, or I haven't been in those meetings, but this is how I see the value of it.
So is it going to be open to the Trojan Vision? Is even though it's the SCA television station, you just have to be a USC student in order to take that class. Is this going to be the same with this?
I believe it. My understanding is the same. It's open to everybody. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So what kind of podcasts will you all be making, say in the fall or whatever?
Well, in the past, what we've done, there were students that did things about topics that related to school cinematic arts. One of the things was the impact of the shopping center on the surrounding areas. So there was a lot of social stories. There was stories about assault on women within the campus grounds. I mean, there was very much a sort of a KCRW style, discussions about what's happening around us. I mean, there was also conversations about movies and, what was better, the first Blade Runner or the second Blade Runner. And that was interesting because they actually got a pretty successful director to come in who was also an expert in that genre.
Who was that?
He was super interesting. I can find his name for
yeah,
you.
you can tell me
He was
later.
really great. But he had some really great insights on, in 1984 where that movie came out, and now, and how that relate our perceptions of Asian women and men being sort of aggressive. Like there was this great social underlying thing that I never considered before that was really enlightening. So there's a variety of things. My understanding is this coming semester, this class will be similar to that format, conversation, interview style. The second class, I think, is going to be more of scripted in there.
Okay, because that's what I was going to ask you, is if this is ever going to veer towards like scripted storytelling.
Yes.
So, because
Yeah,
that
I think
is
so, yeah. And that's a
very
big
much,
market. Like there's a lot of people that watch and listen. Well, more Well, more with scripted. I think there's more of a push to. There are people that listen, whereas like Joe Rogan and those big fish, they they have both the audio and the video, and people watch clips on YouTube a lot, kind of thing.
So you think that in the scripted, say like if you've got an original scripted series for as a podcast, that some people will just be listening and some people will actually be watching the actors perform voice?
I don't know. I think that the scripted would be more like a radio show, whereas you would have people just talk. I know for the scripted for us, I don't think. I'm not even 100% sure it's going to have a video aspect of it.
Oh,
it may be audio only. I haven't seen the syllabus, so I don't know.
Yeah, because I do find it fascinating. For example, Pamela Adlon. You know who she is?
I know her.
I mean, you know her personally?
Yeah, my wife is a casting director, and she does a lot of animation.
Oh, really? Right, and that's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
Pamela Adlon
brilliant.
does a lot of animation.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to see her work, for example.
Yeah.
So that you can see like what do they do with their mouth? Because they're acting fully.
Is a skill set.
Yeah, it is a skill set, and to be able to see that work being done.
Shows with her. She's a genius.
Yeah, and like, how do you film that cinematically in a way that makes it interesting, so that you're recording the podcast? I don't know. I could just see that. It's
I think that if you were going to make that a podcast format, if I was given an interview with her in this sort of setting, we would talk about topics, but I would also prepare and get a bunch of clips of her working or in other locations and cut that into the picture.
Right.
With the challenge, not the challenge, but what has to happen is when you have a production like this, and I had to do this with mine, is that I shot the video content of it, I edited it, and made it available for YouTube, and then I had to take a separate timeline and cut it separately for audio only.
Yeah.
Because some of the things that are visual references on YouTube don't make any sense. So they're basically two different deliverables that I push
and
out.
that's what I think could be fascinating about it, is that you've got you can create two different products after the same. For example, you could have a visual, like cameras, you record the whole session that's totally closed caption for a deaf audience or something, and then you can have an audio only version where you do things like you have to introduce the clip differently, and then you could have a version that's both, or I don't know. It just seems to me like there's opportunity to make several products out of the one.
That's exactly, in a big way, why I'm attracted to this, because you hit the record button in one sitting, you have multiple pieces of content that can work in different formats. So one of the friends of mine that I interviewed for my podcast about a year ago, he's a stand-up comic, and I set up with him a sort of an editorial photo shoot. And so in the YouTube portion of it, we talked about that photo shoot, and what was cut in was the pictures and the behind the scenes. But that didn't really work exactly in the audio part, so we talked about it, but there was nothing visual to cut to.
Right.
But I love this idea that you could sit down, hit record, and when you're done, you could imagine different
ways of using it. Yeah.
In one sitting.
How do you think creating a professional storytelling podcast is different from, say, like what's evolving on Clubhouse, for example?
Well, I think I got into Clubhouse a little bit, and what I like about it is it had a certain amount of access to really high-level people that you didn't usually get in a lot of other social media formats. I mean, if I DM Jay-Z, he's not going to answer back. But, there were certain people that were doing quick things on Clubhouse and were interacting with the listeners sort of on a one-on-one. And I thought that was kind of cool. I feel like it has a limitation. I don't know how it can sustain because it is audio only. I'm not on it as much as I was. I can't really see where it's going to go in the future. I heard that they were going to potentially record some and bank them so that you can listen to them later. I'm not really sure.
My problem with it is that to me, you had to be on there for very long. You had to sit through a lot of
Yeah.
crap to get to a nugget of
Right. Yeah.
brilliance,
Yeah.
and so I didn't have the patience for that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I wanted to get on it because it was such a wave of attention. I wanted to have experience in it, so I got on. But I haven't been on it lately.
Yeah.
I can't really see. I'm sorry, hold on one sec. I'm getting texted, so just want to make sure there's nothing burning down.
Okay, yeah.
All good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I ain't mad at him for trying. There's a lot of ways to go in different media. I've been trying to educate myself as much as possible in the Web3 space because I feel like that's coming, and so which will have direct relationships to all of the media that we're creating. So.
How many kids will you have in the classes, and will it be just one-off class or per semester?
So what did we have? I think we had last semester was about 18 or 19 kids, I think.
Okay,
I don't know
that's a
what it
good
is
size
coming
class.
up. I won't know until we get closer to the semester. I don't know how many for the narrative. I know that it was. I know that as soon as it was announced, he was. It was popular. I think people were
filled up
leaning into
quickly.
it. Yeah.
So, you were teaching the class the last
I was
past
producing
year?
it, basically.
You were
I was
producing
doing
it.
the-
Oh,
the
okay. And
support
who's
for it.
teaching the?
An instructor named Jackson, and he'll do both.
Oh, okay.
This coming semester.
Oh, okay. And so will it be like if you're signing up for the class, are you signing up for one class, or will you have sections? Like how is it?
So it'll be one class, and they'll go through the process. They'll go through, setting up. What is it? Where is it? What is a good one? They'll have that conversation, and then they'll talk about show format, and then they'll talk about subject matter and picking the subject matter. Each group will then pick their subject matter, and then there'll be stages in which they start collecting that content and start recording that content, and then it'll go into editing and then showing it at the end.
So I'm guessing that there's going to be some production aspect to the classes, like when you take production 101, you have to learn how to use the camera and learn how to use a light kit and all of that.
Well, fortunately for them, the way I set this up, it's almost turnkey, so it doesn't really change from this. So you pretty much just sit down and then flip on a switch.
And you can do that. Oh, that's
and so
cool.
what will happen is you could have a host and two guests. We have 3 cameras, so the cameras can be switched. We have an audio board that goes into, and so the levels could be adjusted. So you would have a guest, a host. You would have a producer here, basically, that would sit and monitor the tech that's happening. And then you have this monitor here where you can see the cameras and where they are and see the audio. When it's done, the file's recorded. You take that into editorial.
And you edit from there. Oh, okay. That is cool. So, of course, the growth potential is there,
Yes.
of course. But how do you see this evolving, like over the next couple semesters or whatever? Are we still in the proof of concept phase is what I'm asking? Or do you think that you've passed that now, that you can start thinking about, for example, the comedy program is a good example where that really started off with writing a sitcom class. And then now you've got, like cinematography for comedy and how do you direct comedy and how you do. So I could see this kind of going, and even Trojan Vision. Now they've got lots of different shows. You got the morning show and the evening and opinion shows and, talk shows and all that. Like do you feel like there is, the potential for that with this? And I'm especially asking this in the context of this is not like the microphone is probably, maybe some people think the microphone is more important than the camera in this, whereas as a school we're used to this being like the primary. Well,
Story is king. So these are just the tools to get the story out. So if we have the best and the story is no good, then we haven't done our job. So I think of it as evolving. My hope is that we will look at what the students are leaning into and what the market is doing, and sort of crafting a class that addresses that, so that when students come take the class and then leave, they feel like they have a lot in their toolbox to get into the space.
Okay.
So the class will always, I hope, improve. What it will be in fall, I think, will be very drastic from what we just saw in the beginning,
Okay.
with a lot of improvements. I think paying attention to what's happening in the real world, we have a lot of resources and smart people here. We should be able to, adapt as we go and constantly improve.
Yeah.
That's my hope.
That's cool. And I'm going to mention, of course, like the, what was it called? Jack and Lou podcast that came out of the feature film production project that they couldn't film. So they ended up doing the podcast with Lisa Kudrow. And they've won some awards for it, and it's definitely out there. It's on Spotify. They even had a couple ads for it. Is there any other podcast type thing happening at the school that you know of that you think I should look into?
I know that Annenberg has several, I think.
Oh, okay.
I don't know about the other schools. In terms of SCA, if there's stuff happening, it's probably students or former students that have created their own.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I'm not super sure.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. Anything else you think is important to?
I don't know, who's your audience?
It's alums, and it's basically it's our SCA community magazine.
Yeah.
And it goes to, the big audience. It goes to the audience I mostly create from in mine is alumni.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping that with this class, that it is a good reflection of us reacting to a market. Creating something that's relevant. If we get to the point where we're actually making an official one out of SCA, that it is part of how we communicate to all those people with the latest and greatest and all the exciting things that are happening.
Yeah. Tracy, who works for Wondery now, she did a couple SCA podcasts when she was in school, became really interested in podcasts.
Yeah.
And we had been trying to do one in the communications office, but we don't have the knowledge or the time to do it.
And it's not cheap. I mean, to make something nice, there's a scalability. Like when you just start playing around and you're just doing something, and then all of a sudden, I wanted it to look and sound professional.
Yeah.
That jump is not insignificant.
Yeah. So and that jump is pretty obvious when you start listening to podcasts. You can tell. She approached us and said she wanted to do something, so we let her.
Yeah.
And this was after we had the suicides, and she did a mental health focused podcast and did a couple episodes about how students were reacting to that, and how they were thinking about their own well-being.
Yeah.
And it was good enough to get her a job at Wondery when she graduated.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I know that Claire Kay, I don't know if you ever met her, but she
I know Claire.
She also started her own around mental health, and her father's a doctor. She would have these great conversations, because one of the kids that passed away was her friend. So it was part of her way to sort of
to cope and heal. Yeah.
Heal. I mean, I don't know what you would call it. You can't really rationalize it.
Yeah.
Try to understand for herself. And so she created that. I'll send you the link. And she does it she has a very professional product, and her dad talks to her, can give there's a great perspective of her being here, seeing this play out, and then having conversations with her dad about his professional experience and how those things are handled.
That's great. Send me that. I think I'm Facebook friends with her, so she might have it on
she's
her.
Very talented.
But that's something I was thinking of doing as a sidebar. It's like some alum, and I'm going to, of course, mention Tracy and her work at Wondery and Kay, and maybe I'll ask Tracy. She might know if there are other people working in podcast space So
Yeah, I
Cool.
think a lot of people will. I think, it's just one of those things I would encourage you to sort of look at. Even if you don't do it, just understand the process of it, and what they're doing.
Awesome. Cool in the gang. Thanks, Vince.